pursued by the paparazzi.
It would be horrific to lose an innocent bystander during a chase like this, and something to have happened to them as well.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle report on what they're calling a near-catastrophic car chase in New York, what the police are now saying. Plus,
I think people will listen to some of our music for a lot longer after we die. You know, I really do. But this will make it even longer, I think.
They may sing some of the biggest songs in the world, but they may not necessarily own those songs. In tonight's Prime Focus, we look at the artists now re-recording their catalogs and cutting major deals. And
to see this sort of flood of attention towards Asian cuisine as this like elevated food, this food people want to spend money on, all of a sudden it's like cool. I feel like when we were kids it wasn't cool.
It definitely was not cool.
we meet the AAPI chefs using food to celebrate and amplify their own Asian American culture. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Kana Whitworth in for Lindsay Davis, and thank you so much for streaming with us tonight. We're following those stories and a lot more tonight, including the multi-count indictment against Brian Kohberger for the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students last fall. We'll bring you those details. Plus, an ABC News exclusive, a member of the Idaho jury that convicted Lori Vallow Daybell speaks out. And the moment a freight ship, more than 600 feet long, runs aground in the Detroit River. Our correspondents are fanned out across the country covering all of those stories and more for us tonight. But we begin tonight with that chase in Manhattan. Paparazzi following Prince Harry, his wife Meghan, and Meghan's mother in what the couple described as a near-catastrophic car chase. The couple arrived last night in Midtown Manhattan, where Meghan was an honoree at the Women of Vision Awards. The couple then leaving the event shortly after 10 p.m., and that's when they say they were immediately followed by a caravan of motorcycles and mopeds. Now, Prince Harry has not been reluctant to express his disdain for the press and paparazzi, blaming them for the death of his mother, Princess Diana, who was killed in a paparazzi chase a little more than 25 years ago. Now, with reports that some of these photographers covered their license plates, there's an investigation underway right now. But authorities in New York tell a bit of a different story. Questions tonight about who is really to blame and will there be charges? ABC's Trevor Auld leads us off.
Harry and Meghan, this way.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, along with Meghan's mother, Doria Ragland, arrived at the Women of Vision Awards in New York City last night to a swarm of flashing cameras. It was Harry's first public appearance since the coronation.
Watch out.
But their exit took a dangerous turn, according to a spokesperson who says they were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. Harry and Meghan's spokesperson said after leaving this theater, the paparazzi were driving up on the sidewalk. They were cutting people off, going backwards down one-way streets. They believe they could have easily caused a fatal crash.
The way I saw them follow the car, I wasn't surprised by the headlines.
Guys, let's get some space, okay?
After pulling into a police precinct, this video showing the moment they tried getting into a taxi to elude the photographers.
Just give us some space.
Their security guard at one point getting out, trying to clear the paparazzi.
It was a strobe show. It was like lights everywhere.
Sunny Singh was driving that taxi.
They told me to circle back. They were just about to give me the address to where they were going, right? But the paparazzis came, and then he told me to circle back to the precinct.
So very quickly?
Yeah.
How long were you?
Maybe 10, 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes in the ride?
Max, yeah.
Did it seem tense inside?
They were nervous. You see the faces that they were nervous.
There are some questions about how dangerous the situation was. NYPD saying in a statement numerous photographers made their transport challenging, but there were no reported collisions, summonses, injuries, or arrests. Still, New York's mayor called the actions by the paparazzi reckless and irresponsible.
You shouldn't be speeding anywhere, but this is a densely populated city. And I think all of us, I don't think there's many of us who don't recall how his mom died.
These last chilling images of Diana in Paris in 1997, a reminder of the car chase that soon followed and her death, which Harry has openly blamed on the paparazzi, talking about it in his Apple TV series, The Me You Can't See.
My mother was chased to her death while she was in a relationship with someone that wasn't white. And now look what's happened. You want to talk about history repeating itself? They're not going to stop until she dies.
And Trevor Alt is joining us now. So, Trevor, what are city officials saying about how dangerous this situation actually became?
Well, they're saying they take it very seriously, Kana, and the mayor did express some skepticism as to whether or not this was actually a 2-hour chase, but he said they were very concerned about the risk this could pose, not just for Harry and Meghan, but also for the many bystanders on the streets of New York. As you know, this is a very crowded city. Kana.
Right. Trevor, our thanks to you. And now ABC Royal contributor Omid Scobie joining us now to take a closer look at this incident. So thank you so much for joining us. Look, first, all day, we have been hearing these various accounts and details about how exactly this all played out. Can you take us through your understanding of what happened?
Yeah, obviously we started the day with that sort of bombshell statement from Harry and Meghan's team that really conveyed some of the emotion that was experienced and felt by the couple who, I'm told by sources, even this morning, were still shaken up, but very thankful that things didn't end up as catastrophic as perhaps they had feared. But of course, we've heard throughout the day details about this 2-hour pursuits that they had with the paparazzi after they left last night's event that included them sort of taking refuge in one of the police precincts at one point. So it sort of turned into this very aggressive game of cat and mouse with Harry and Meghan right at the middle of it. And we saw, despite how great their security is, and they do have one of the best teams in the business, they weren't able to completely outsmart some of those photographers that were desperate to capture some sort of exclusive moment.
Right. Well, and of course, you know, we have ABC police sources telling us that at no time did Harry and Meghan enter the police precinct, according to those sources. So let's unpack some of this stuff from New York City police here. Of course, as we mentioned, they were escorting the couple when they left. They say that photographers on bicycles were seen, but according to authorities, it was not the kind of wild caravan described by Harry and Meghan's team. And so that has led some people to doubt the couple's claims entirely that this was a dangerous situation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think we hear the words chase and we assume that it, or at least it sounds like it was some kind of Fast and the Furious style sort of hot pursuit through the streets of Manhattan. Of course, as we know, it's a city that crawls very slowly on those streets. But it didn't change the fact that they were at many times followed by sort of 6, 7, 8 different photographers, different agencies, all desperate to capture at least some sort of exclusive moment with the couple, but also find out where they were staying. I think it really shows the sort of extent that photographers will go to get that exclusive image. Despite whether the motorcade or the cars that they were in were moving fast or slow, it doesn't change the fact that this was an aggressive encounter with a number of photographers on different modes of transport, bikes, motorbikes, and cars.
Right. How about this from your reporting? Has anyone in the royal family, reached out to Harry about the incident?
I think this is the element of the day that has surprised me the most. This is a story that is almost straight out of Princess Diana's book. We've heard about those aggressive encounters with the paparazzi in the past. So ultimately, it's the thing that took her life in that Paris tunnel. And so to the likes of King Charles and Prince William, hearing this story would have no doubt stirred some kind of emotional response. And so I was really shocked to hear from sources that neither Harry nor Meghan had heard from any members of the royal family, even some hours after this story had broken.
Right, yeah, I mean, we can't discuss this, of course, without recalling Princess Diana. But also, let's talk about some of the rules that are different in the UK, right? They have laws restricting the paparazzi. In the US, they don't have that, fully exposed here. How has that weighed on their life here in the US?
We saw Harry and Meghan move to California and they started a life away from the kind of aggressive British tabloids that, whilst photos aren't causing harm over here, words certainly do, and they're really up against it when they're working members of the royal family. Of course, their big problem with the leaks and the briefings that were coming from inside the palace and ending up in the pages of some of Britain's most read newspapers. Of course, as you say, we don't have to worry about paparazzi over here. That culture has been left firmly behind in the early 2000s. And for Harry and Meghan, who, although they're away from some of the sort of toxic practices of the British media in the US, they're not away from this sort of rabid paparazzi culture that does still exist over there, even if the market itself is much smaller. Those images are still going to be worth something, and there's a price on their heads wherever they go.
Omid Scobie, thank you so much for your insight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And next tonight, the convicted terrorist who drove a rented truck down a bike path along the Hudson River 5 years ago, sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. Sayfullo Saipov killed 8 people and seriously injured 18 more in an ISIS-inspired attack on Halloween. Before the sentencing, relatives of the victims confronted him with their pain and suffering. ABC's Aaron Katersky is in New York City for us tonight.
Called a murderer, a monster, and a waste of space, tonight, Sayfullo Saipov is assured to die in prison. A federal judge sentencing him to 8 consecutive life sentences for carrying out the worst terror attack in New York since 9/11. 5.5 years after he hurtled down a bike path in a rented truck, the judge said Saipov still did not care about the suffering of the victims and their families, who confronted Saipov in court with their undiminished pain. "You drove that truck into my beloved daughter and you killed her," the father of Anne-Laura Ducat said. "Why, Mr. Saipov? Why did you do this to her?" Saipov never looked up. The wife of Alejandro Pagnucco shouting, "You cannot even look at us? You're worthless." Monica Missio said she was a mother subsumed by grief after Saipov killed her only child, Nicholas Cleves. People witnessed him getting struck and catapulted into the air, she said. "I'm haunted by the brutal way Nicholas died." Saipov's attack ended when he crashed into a school bus with children aboard.
Oh my God!
Emerged waving fake guns and was shot by police. Aristide Melissas needed brain surgery after he was struck. His wife lost both of her legs.
I hope really for him in jail that he will come to a point where he can regret, he can ask for forgiveness.
Well, just unbelievable there. Aaron Katersky is joining us now. So, Aaron, what is next for Saipov?
He had been spared the death penalty. The jury during the sentencing phase, Kana, was unable to reach a unanimous verdict on death. So he's automatically sentenced to life in prison. And that means he's headed to the nation's most secure federal prison in Colorado, Florence, Colorado. Once he's there, he's in for 22 hours a day alone in his cell. Kana?
All right, Aaron, our thanks to you. Also in New York, a state jury has found a limousine operator guilty for a deadly crash in 2018. Nima Hussein was in charge of day-to-day operations at this company when they rented a limo that sped down a hill, crashing into a parked car and killing all 18 inside the limo and 2 pedestrians. The NTSB found that the limo had failed an inspection about a month before the accident and that one of the brakes wasn't working. Hussein was convicted on 20 counts of second-degree manslaughter. And now to some developing news here we just received a short time ago. The House of Representatives passing a resolution to expel embattled Congressman George Santos, now referring him to the House Ethics Committee. So let's get right to our senior congressional correspondent, Rachel Scott, for more. So, Rachel, there was something in this vote total that does not bode well for Santos. Can you break that down for us and then let us know where we go from here?
Yeah, not at all, Kana, because every single Republican voted to refer this resolution that would expel Congressman George Santos from the House over to the House Ethics Committee. We know that Congressman George Santos is facing multiple investigations at this point. He's facing 13 federal charges, everything from money laundering. He's accused of stealing unemployment benefits during the pandemic. He still insists that he is innocent. So at this point, this goes over to the House Ethics Committee, which is also investigating Congressman Santos. In a way, this does give Republicans a little bit of an off-ramp here. There are certainly a growing number of Republicans who want to see action against Congressman George Santos, who believe that he should resign. But we also know that the House Ethics Committee tends to move very slowly. And so some members of Congress are saying this could take 60 days to sort of get any sort of solution or word from the House Ethics Committee. But tonight, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is urging them to move very quickly. Meanwhile, he continues to rely on Santos's vote in the House.
And Rachel, Santos himself now has responded to this vote. What did he say?
You know, one thing about Congressman Santos, he has remained defiant in the face of all of this controversy. Tonight, he tells our Capitol Hill team that he is innocent until proven guilty. He also voted for this resolution to move over to the House Ethics Committee. I think he wants to slow down the process a little bit, Kana.
Wow, Rachel, our thanks to you.
Thanks.
And also tonight, President Biden is on his way to Japan for a G7 summit. But before he left, he had a message for Americans saying he is confident there will be an agreement on the budget and that America will not default. Here's ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce.
Embarking on his trip to Japan for the G7 summit, President Biden today tried to reassure America and the world that the U.S. is not going to default on its debt and put the global economy at risk.
I'm confident that we'll get the agreement on the budget, that America will not default.
In exchange for agreeing to raise the debt limit and pay off the nation's bills, Republicans are demanding steep spending cuts and something Speaker Kevin McCarthy has called a red line, tougher work requirements for federal aid programs. Today, the president acknowledged it's on the table while downplaying its significance.
I voted years ago for the work requirements that exist, but it's possible there could be a few others, but not anything of any consequence.
Asked about that comment, Republicans burst out laughing.
Anything that has consequence. This is a senator who voted for work requirements.
The one area of solid agreement, both sides want to prevent default, which could lead to the loss of millions of jobs, tank the economy, and spark a recession.
Well, that's a scary thing to agree on, to say the least. So Mary Bruce is joining us now. So where do these negotiations stand tonight?
Well, Kana, tonight, White House and congressional aides are hunkered down trying to negotiate a deal, looking for enough areas of compromise to push this over the finish line. The president will be back here on Sunday. He's cutting his trip short, he says, so that he can be here in person for the final negotiations and to hopefully sign that deal, Kana.
All right, a big weekend ahead. Mary, thank you. Next now to the migrant crisis extending itself very far from the border. More than 4,200 arriving in New York City last week alone. The city announcing plans to house them in standalone gyms at up to 20 schools. But some students and parents are protesting. They're worried about their kids' safety. Mayor Eric Adams says that he's out of other options, calling it a last resort. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, with New York City at a breaking point as it scrambles to house hundreds of asylum seekers arriving daily. Safety first! A plan to potentially convert up to 20 standalone public school gyms into short-term emergency shelters facing fierce criticism.
I want my kids to be safe.
For days, parents and students demonstrating outside of this school, one of 6 sites in Brooklyn apparently under consideration.
It breaks my heart that we don't have the facilities to house them, but this is not a viable option.
Nearly a week after the end of Title 42, cities across the U.S. bracing for a wave of migrants. More than 4,200 arriving in New York City last week alone. After backlash from parents, officials moving dozens of asylum seekers from this Coney Island school gym to a long-term facility in Manhattan after nearly 2 days. It was the only gym being used as a shelter. It comes as city officials say they are out of space at more than 150 emergency shelters, and nearly half of all hotel rooms are already housing migrants.
Whomever is telling us not to go somewhere, I have one question from them. You tell me where we should go then. That's what I need.
And intense words there from the mayor. Stephanie Ramos is joining us now. So, Stephanie, what prompted this move by Mayor Adams?
Well, Kana, New York City was forced to consider all options, especially after a judge granted a temporary restraining order preventing the city from sending migrants north of here to nearby Orange County. Kana.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. And now to an update in the Idaho college murders. A surprise today ahead of the planned preliminary hearing in June. Instead, the suspect, Bryan Kohberger, has been indicted by a grand jury in Moscow, Idaho. He's charged with 4 counts of murder and felony burglary in the deaths of the 4 students stabbed to death in November of last year. I've been following this story from the very beginning. So here is what that indictment means for this upcoming high-profile trial.
Tonight, a grand jury in Idaho indicting Bryan Kohberger on first-degree murder charges for the deaths of 4 college students at the University of Idaho. The move means prosecutors will no longer have to lay out their case at a preliminary hearing.
This is an easier route for prosecutors to take. No defense attorney cross-examining witnesses, no judge there. Just the prosecution presenting the case it wants these grand jurors to hear.
The 28-year-old PhD student is accused of stabbing Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin inside this off-campus home. One of the two roommates who survived saw a masked man that night with bushy eyebrows. She's expected to be a key witness at trial.
We have a search warrant for the building.
Prosecutors have amassed more than 20,000 pieces of evidence, including DNA, along with items seized during this search of Koberger's apartment at Washington State. They say they found a pillow and mattress cover that tested presumptive positive for blood. Tonight, Kaylee Gonzalez's father, encouraged by the indictment, telling ABC News, "We are just grateful another step in the process has been completed, and we believe this was the best option for the circumstances."
I want to get the show on the road. I want to get to where we get to court.
All right, so the next step here in court is Monday. Bryan Kohberger is expected to be formally arraigned on Monday morning. He is also expected at that point to enter a plea of not guilty. Now, we, of course, will be following this. I want you to know I'm hosting a new ABC News audio podcast. It's about this case. It's called The King Road Killings. And you can listen to the trailer right now, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to just click the follow button and get the episodes delivered right to your phone when this series launches on June 7th. Also tonight in Montana, the governor there signed a law on today banning TikTok from operating in the state, making Montana the first state to prohibit mobile app stores from offering the Chinese-owned video app. The ban is scheduled to go into effect January 1st, but the ACLU and other First Amendment defenders have said they will challenge it first. Some lawmakers and the FBI are concerned that the Chinese government could use the app to access information on American citizens or push pro-Beijing misinformation to influence the public. TikTok says that has never happened. Well, still a lot more to get to here tonight on Prime. Coming up, what officials say caused a freighter to run aground, landing on the Canadian side of a river. But next, in our Prime focus, more artists are choosing to give up control of their music by selling their music catalogs. Now, while the financial gain can be immense, what does it mean to have someone else in charge of your life's work?
So we said, no, we don't want to do that. Songwriters and recording artists should own their own catalog and their own songs. But we started to think about it, and it started to make sense.
Whenever news breaks,
the crushing families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
And welcome back. To sell or not to sell, a question many artists have faced regarding their music catalogs. It's the flip side of the crusade big-name artists like Taylor Swift are on to re-record their songs in order to have full ownership of them. Instead, some musicians are looking at the financial pros and cons of selling their catalogs and putting their music in the hands of a team who will manage their legacy for years to come. Our Phil Lipoff spoke with industry legends about why some artists are buying into the trend.
For almost 50 years, Air Supply has been putting out anthemic love songs with soaring lyrics and bold vocals. Graham Russell and Russell Hitchcock have arguably cornered the market on the big 80s love ballad. Case in point, Lost in Love. Making love out of nothing at all. And all out of love. Those songs and so many others striking a chord generation after generation.
You can see the first 10 rows, and they're in tears, and they're crying or they're laughing, and you can see that it's so intense, and they're like following and singing every word. And to us, that's a great responsibility.
Like Air Supply, the late Whitney Houston's legacy lives on through her music. Born in New Jersey, known worldwide, Houston's powerful, once-in-a-generation voice, churning out hit after hit, from dance tracks to beautiful ballads for almost 3 decades. Greatest love of all. I Want to Dance with Somebody. And of course, but 11 years after her death, it's up to Pat Houston to preserve Whitney's legacy.
I honor and respect the position that I'm in as a flamekeeper for her legacy.
Pat is Whitney's sister-in-law and former manager, and now the executor of her estate.
Her talent was such a wonderment, and the fact that they're still listening to her music and still interested in her brand, it's very powerful.
Whitney's estate and Air Supply have more than just huge hits in common. Neither fully owns their music catalogs anymore. And they're not alone. A collection of major artists have gone on to sell all or part of their catalogs, an especially popular trend over the last several years.
Artists, creators, owners of the copyrights can slice and dice these catalogs in a million different ways. Sometimes they'll just sell the publishing, sometimes they'll just sell the recorded music rights.
Bruce Springsteen reportedly sold his catalog to Sony for more than $500 million. Other legends have sold all or part of their catalogs as well, like Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Stevie Nicks, and David Bowie. And more modern artists like Justin Timberlake and John Legend. Even Justin Bieber, at just 28 years old, reportedly sold his catalog for a staggering $200 million.
Music catalogs are a very complicated asset. The value changes all the time. It fluctuates.
So why do it? For more seasoned artists, it can help with estate planning.
They don't have to worry about what their heirs are going to do with this very complicated asset of a song catalog.
But then there's Taylor Swift. Famously re-recording her entire catalog to maintain rights over her work after the recordings of her first 6 albums were sold without her consent.
I think that artists deserve to own their work. I just feel very passionately about that.
She's sort of the rising tide that lifts all boats because, yes, all of this was in her self-interest, but she has educated countless musicians and countless fans about the value of owning your own creative work.
Still, the thinking that an artist is selling out by selling their work seems to be coming to an end.
Bob Dylan sold his catalog. If those songs aren't sacred, you know, as much as you can say that about a popular song, what is?
So then, who's buying these catalogs and what are they doing with them?
2006. Yeah. That Kurt Cobain deal was huge.
It was. Larry Mestel is the founder and CEO of Primary Wave. The publishing and management company owns a percentage of Air Supply and Whitney Houston's catalogs, as well as Stevie Nicks, Prince, Bob Marley, James Brown, Def Leppard, and Kurt Cobain, just to name a few.
So why, in 2006, did you decide to start on this path in the music industry? A lot of these legendary and iconic artists, which is what we specialize in, were not being focused on by their major labels.
Primary Wave rarely ever buys 100% of an artist's catalog, and that's because Larry wants to create and build partnerships.
We do not create, we do not market without an artist's approval. You could see some of the things we've done for Whitney, for Bob Marley, Alice Cooper.
The walls of Primary Wave proudly list the company's artists and the projects they've collaborated on.
When Larry's talking about these relationships he creates with the artists, these partnerships, sometimes it's to build on the reputation, build on the brand. For instance, Whitney Houston, a line of MAC Cosmetics, her own perfume.
The Houston estate and Primary Wave began working together in 2019.
We've done a biographical film. We have a new gospel album. We have a Broadway show in development.
It has to feel right. And I would not do anything that I didn't think she would be proud of.
One of the first meetings with Houston's estate and Primary Wave involved going through her old recordings.
We found a track deep in the vault called Higher Love, and one of my creatives got Kygo very quickly to remix the record.
It was very energetic, and we just felt that it would make a major run, and it did.
The result, a chart-topping song 7 years after Houston's death, reintroducing a new generation to her incredible talent.
Her brand, unfortunately, was tarnished by a lot of issues. And so we said, look, we have to bring the conversation back to music.
Air Supply has also embraced the partnership, including this AAA ad. I'm all out of love for my old insurance. But it did take some time for them to feel comfortable with it.
At first, we said, no, we don't want to do that. Songwriters and recording artists should own their own catalog and their own songs. But we started to think about it, and it started to make sense.
Often selling the catalog is a matter of timing. For Primary Wave, it will take years of success for Larry to consider an acquisition.
We're not interested in brand new acts where the income streams are just coming down and you just can't outmarket the decline.
But sometimes those songs can unexpectedly sell themselves. Like when Dreams by Fleetwood Mac suddenly became a TikTok sensation, sending the song back to the top of the charts in 2020.
Did you have any hand in the skateboard guy?
Can I tell you, I'm going to say this often, right? Better to be lucky than good.
Moments like that are unexpected, and for artists, it can be a gamble to sell their catalogs. In the event, they become even more valuable over time.
If the air starts to come out of the catalog market, people will think, okay, I sold at a really good time. Conversely, if things continue to heat up, they'll be like, oh, damn, I should have waited.
Whether the artist sells their catalog or re-records it.
Bottom line is, it all ends up with the person that writes the songs. Do you want to do it or you don't?
With Air Supply, that's Graham, and he says it was time for those hands to let go.
I think people will listen to some of our music for a lot longer after we die, I really do. But this will make it even longer, I think. The songs will always be mine because they're my babies. But why not let them go out into the universe and...
let them spread their wings.
And spread their wings and fly. You know what I mean?
All right, a lasting legacy for sure. And our thanks to you, Filipoff. We have a lot more to get to here tonight. Coming up, a mother found guilty of killing her 2 children. The exclusive interview with one of the jurors on the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. But next, the results are in for the NBA Draft Lottery. We take a closer look at the process and why one team may have hit the jackpot. That's in By the Numbers.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
For From America's #1 news comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and customizable to your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
Brooke Shields, the most photographed woman in the world.
A sexualized child model.
Exploitation.
What happened to her isn't really about her, it's just about women.
I let myself be vulnerable, and this is the first time I've ever spoken about what happened. I thought my one no should have been enough, you know. When someone like Brooke Shields talks about it, it makes a difference. I'm amazed that I survived any of it.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. Been a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning, America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's what people don't see during the commercial breaks.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot without ever having a chance to share my side of the story.
Aaron Carter's life story in one sentence.
The drugs, the drinking.
Everything goes back to tragedy.
But just know I've turned it around, and I've got a lot to say. There's always two sides to every story.
This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
And welcome back. The San Antonio Spurs won the NBA draft lottery last night, and they might just have hit the jackpot. Let's take a look by the numbers. The Spurs had a 14% chance of having the winning ping pong ball to select first in this summer's NBA draft after finishing as one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA this season. And they got the lucky bounce, winning the rights to the #1 overall pick for the 3rd time in franchise history. Now, the previous 2 times that they selected Hall of Famers David Robinson in 1987 and then Tim Duncan in 1997. So this time, they will be able to select 19-year-old French star Victor Wembanyama, quite possibly the most hyped NBA prospect since LeBron James graced the cover of Sports Illustrated in high school. So Wemby, as they call him, measuring in at 7 feet tall, 5 inches. He's 7'5", with an 8-foot wingspan. He is considered a generational talent, combining height, shooting ability, and defensive skills. And he would be going to a franchise with a long championship pedigree, of course. The Spurs winning 5 NBA titles since 1999. They're also led by Greg Popovich, who's won an NBA record 1,366 games since taking over as head coach of the Spurs in 1996. About 7.5 years before Wemby was even born. Now, the Spurs have missed the playoffs for the past 4 seasons, but with Wembanyama now waiting to take center stage, many expect that streak to finally end. And his message to Spurs fans last night, he said, "I'm trying to win a ring ASAP, so get ready." I like that message. We have a lot more ahead here on Prime, including a battle over a famous phrase, why a restaurant is waging a legal battle against Taco Bell. And it's more than a meal. 2 Asian American female chefs tell us how they're using food as an introduction to their heritage and traditions. That's in our Culture Conversations.
What does it take to be America's #1 news? It takes asking the straightforward, tough questions.
Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
The news-making interviews.
You said that there were 6 friends. One of them was sick.
Yeah.
Do you have future political aspirations?
Going to the front line.
The search for survivors. How does this war end?
And getting to the heart of the story.
Thank you for being here. We'll be here for the long run.
ABC News, #1 in the morning, the #1 newscast, #1 in daytime talk, Friday nights, Sunday mornings versus the competition, and the #1 streaming news. Thank you for making ABC News America's trusted, straightforward first choice.
With so much happening these days, it's hard to keep up.
Things change hour by hour, minute by minute.
The historic weather that's now unfolding.
The worries on Wall Street.
We're bringing you the Right Now. With a nationwide teacher shortage.
The Right Now look at the day ahead. An alert this morning for dog owners and the key takeaways from the biggest stories.
World News Now and America This Morning. America's #1 early morning news.
Today does feel a little different. Early mornings on ABC News Live. This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital, destructive Cat 4 storm.
We're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot without ever having a chance to share my side of the story.
Aaron Carter's life story in one sentence.
The drugs, the drinking.
Everything goes back to tragedy.
I just know I've turned it around, and I've got a lot to say. There's always 2 sides to every story.
Get ready, America, every Friday.
The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff.
Yes! And save big time, too. The right stuff. Fridays on GMA.
You're gonna love it.
13 women opened their doors to the man who would end their lives.
Truth and Lies, The Boston Strangler, the new true crime podcast series. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts and watch Boston Strangler starring Keira Knightley, streaming on Hulu.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute.
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
And welcome back. Police captured the last of 4 prisoners who escaped from a Philadelphia prison more than a week ago. Also, we're hearing from the parents of that Little League baseball player who was seriously hurt after falling out of a bunk bed, and the trademark battle over a popular phrase about tacos. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
U.S. Marshals in Philadelphia announcing the arrest of 18-year-old Amin Hurst, the last of 4 prison escapees to be captured after going on the run 10 days ago from the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center, cutting a hole through a prison fence. U.S. Marshal Supervisory Deputy Robert Grant says Hurst missed 3 deadlines to turn himself in, but was under surveillance and seen getting into a car with family members. He was arrested without incident. The prison didn't notice the inmates were gone for nearly 24 hours.
A teenager in Missouri back in school after being suspended for taking videos of a teacher using racial slurs.
A Springfield, Missouri teenager videotaped her teacher repeatedly using a racial slur and then sent it to her mother and a friend. She did not post it to social media. She was suspended for 3 days for improper use of an electronic device. The teacher has since resigned. The family attorney says it's hoping for an apology from the district and that the student's suspension should be removed from her records. School officials say they do not plan to apologize.
The family of a 12-year-old Little Leaguer from Utah who almost lost his life after a fall from a bunk bed at the Little League World Series last summer has filed a new lawsuit claiming the league's neglect led to their son's devastating accident.
I mean, you talk about gross neglect.
All we've been through, and it was 100% preventable.
The Oliversons filing suit claiming to find a history of previous falls, at least a dozen since 2005, the suit claims. Little League telling ABC News, out of an abundance of caution following Easton's fall, Little League removed all bunks from within the dorms and placed each bed frame individually on the floor.
A freighter briefly found itself aground on the Detroit River. Coast Guard saying the 639-foot freighter, known as the Mark W. Baker, was just leaving Detroit from Milwaukee when it ran aground on the Canadian side of Belle Isle due to an electrical malfunction. Officials said it was freed a few hours later and brought to Belle Isle Anchorage for an inspection. A trademark battle over Taco Tuesday underway. Wyoming-based Taco John's is filing a trademark office petition challenging Taco Bell over the use of the popular term. Taco John's said it came up with the idea first. Taco Bell filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to have trademarks related to Taco Tuesday canceled. In the petition, appropriately filed on Tuesday, Taco Bell says the term is a common phrase and should be free for anyone to use.
President Biden honored 9 first responders at the White House with the Medal of Valor. The award honors acts of heroism and bravery by first responders throughout the country. The awards included posthumous honors for NYPD detectives Wilbert Mora and Jason Rivera, who were fatally shot while responding to a domestic dispute in Harlem in January 2022. NYPD detective Sumit Sulan, who took down the gunman in that incident, was also honored.
Also tonight, an ABC News exclusive. A member of the Idaho jury that convicted Lori Vallow Daybell in the murders of her 2 youngest children is speaking out for the first time. ABC's Matt Gutman has that story.
A juror in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial breaking his silence.
I don't think as a human being you are ever really prepared to experience this. You know, you hear about it on movies, TV.
Saul Hernandez is one of the 12 jurors who found the so-called doomsday mom guilty on all charges. Convicted of murdering her 2 children, 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ, and conspiring to kill the wife of her lover and now husband, Chad Daybell.
Is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? Answer, guilty.
Saul revealing he was the lone holdout on one of the murder charges.
You were one of the people who said that no, that the prosecution has not provided the evidence for us to convict her.
I just didn't feel like at that timeline with Tylee, we were quite there yet. And if we were, I perhaps was missing it.
Finally, on the second day of deliberation, Saul agreeing that Lori was guilty. Convinced by reviewing the evidence, prosecutors had argued she'd used money, power, and sex to get what she wanted, and that she and Chad had used religion to manipulate others.
Did you think that Lori really believed that she is this apostle in this apocalyptic doomsday cult?
Yes, I think she started with maybe curiosity, exploring what her initial beliefs were. And once Chad came into the picture, and she went along with it.
Prosecutors say Lori and Chad claimed their kids were zombies and conspired with Lori's brother to murder them. Then, months later, they were seen dancing at their wedding on this beach in Hawaii.
I'm wondering what went through your mind when you saw his testimony, those pictures of Chad and Lori on the beach in Hawaii, when her kids were buried in his backyard.
I was disgusted. I didn't want to look at them. I just couldn't believe how someone can be that happy when your kids are on the ground. And the person that was key in all of this is sitting across from you, smiling at you and dancing with you on the beach.
Saul's impression of Lori changing as the trial went on.
As the case progressed, as the evidence came to light, testimony was shared, it was harder to look at her. And, you know, growing up, you talk about good and bad, God and evil. And I think for the first time in my life, I put a face to evil.
Wow, and that was Matt Gutman reporting for us. Also, Chad Daybell's trial is slated for the summer of 2024. And now to our series, Culture Conversations. For Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month, food is at the center of so many cultures. And tonight, two highly successful Asian American female chefs sit down with ABC's Eva Pilgrim to talk about food and heritage and how their families inspired their love of Asian cuisine and the importance of women supporting each other in the food industry.
Food to me is passion. It's my childhood, it's history, it's the future. It's literally who I am.
Food to me is my connection to people, and it's me connecting to my family, the older generation, the younger generation.
They are two of the most respected Asian female chefs in the country. Chef Esther Choi has taken her Korean heritage to the menus of Mokbar and Ms. Yu, and most recently to Iron Chef's Kitchen Stadium.
And the winner is Chef Choi.
And to beat an Iron Chef was amazing.
I'm going more for modern Italian cuisine, and I think Melissa's doing more traditional.
Top Chef alum Chef Leah Cohen unites the Filipino half of her Filipino-Jewish roots with her travels to Southeast Asia at Pig and Cow and Piggyback.
How's it been for you personally and for your restaurants to see this sort of flood of attention towards Asian cuisine as this like elevated food, this food people want to spend money on? All of a sudden it's like cool. I feel like when we were kids it wasn't cool.
It definitely was not cool.
Oh no.
But it is now, and for good reason, because Asian food in general is just my favorite. Like any kind of Asian.
Good.
It's good.
It's so delicious.
It has soul, it has flavor, it is complex, but it's also can be very simple. I spent a year abroad traveling in Southeast Asia, and I felt passionate about all of the countries. And so at Pig and Cow and at Piggyback, both of my restaurants here in New York, they're basically Southeast Asian, a lot of Thai and Filipino focus.
When I cooked in like the different types of kitchens, it made me want to cook Korean food even more. And I feel like when you fall in love with a certain type of cuisine, then you kind of pay attention more to the culture as well. So it's kind of like a segue or a gateway into learning about a culture.
Food is very much a gateway. Do you see people's minds change about things when they start coming to your restaurant and experiencing your window of what you have to offer them?
I've had so many people come to the restaurant not knowing what Filipino food was and then being like, oh my God, I love Filipino food. I want to go and visit the Philippines. That's what makes me happy, is that, like someone who knew nothing about the culture, the cuisine, and then giving them a reason to want to go and visit, the real deal.
Where did the love of food come from? Who in your family, when you look back, is the person that was like, this is the food I know when I think of home?
My 할머니, grandma, she was kind of the head of our household, and we grew up in South Jersey, no Koreans at all. So my grandmother really used ingredients that were available to her and made it Korean. So I think for me, when I think about like home or my past, it's always my grandmother. And even now I call her for recipes. I call her like, oh, what would you do if, you had this? And I would ask for advice. Her love of food was kind of what I admired the most.
I got my passion for food kind of from my dad. He loved to travel, and he loved taking us places. He made it a point for us to know about my mom's culture and cuisine. My mom was like kind of weird. She wanted to fit in. She wanted to be American, right? Like she came here when she was like 28 years old. So she grew up in the Philippines, and we would go to the Philippines. Since it's such a long flight, we would stop somewhere else, Vietnam, Thailand, Japan. I think that's where my love of food and my love of travel came from. We would just go home and visit, a lot of the old Filipinos in our family. 2 of them are like 92 years old. And all they wanted to do was like just feed the babies. And they were like, here's all we do.
It's like, keep eating, more.
Oh my God.
And they'll be like, oh, you look skinny, or oh, you look fat, but like just eat all the food.
Yeah.
Like they just want you to eat so much and be like healthy.
That is love, like in so many cultures, right? Here's a giant plate of food.
Eat everything. I've been dying to cook with Leah.
Chefs Choi and Cohen once joined forces on Beat Bobby Flay, and now they support each other in real life.
You said you guys are friends, and you in some ways look up to her. Why is that? Why do you think women have to sort of come together like that?
I think it's like the mutual respect. We're both female chefs and we both represent a certain type of culture. I watched her and from the beginning with Pig and Cow, and it really inspired me to want to do that as well.
I respect the fact that Esther really tries to promote Korean cuisine, and her flavors are great, her food is delicious, and she's very passionate, and you can tell through the food that she serves. When we both opened our restaurants like almost a decade ago, there weren't that many female chefs running a kitchen, let alone running their own business. But I think if we didn't have that community and we didn't have those people that we felt like comfortable being like asking for advice, then, you know, we wouldn't be here. I think it's really important for women to support each other and not like tear each other down, because sometimes we all know people try to pit women against each other, and that's not how it should be.
Okay, let's talk about the food.
Okay.
Because we want to eat.
Let's eat.
So I made adobo, which is probably the most popular, well-known Filipino dish. Normally it's just like a braised one-pot meal, but this is pork belly that's fried, so it has some texture, and then a poached egg and the adobo sauce. My adobo is very controversial because I put coconut milk in it, and there are certain places that use coconut milk in their adobo. Not where my mom's from, but I like it because it kind of rounds everything out and it adds a nice richness and creaminess to sometimes an adobo that's very sharp and acidic from the vinegar, the protein of choice.
This is really good.
I love the coconut milk.
I do too. I stand behind it. Anyone who has any other thoughts can bring it up with me later.
Why about this perfect complementing dish to pork? My kimchi, which I told you I'm obsessed with. We make like 9 different types at Mokbar, and we all make it from scratch. So that's kind of my pride and joy, because not a lot of Korean restaurants make their kimchi. They always buy it. And it's so sad because like that's the heart of Korean cuisine, and I feel like you have to make your own kimchi as a Korean restaurant. Like that's so important. So I have 4 different flavors here. We have cucumber, traditional Napa kimchi, and then a white kimchi, which is not spicy at all, and then daikon.
Delicious, y'all.
Oh, thanks for doing this. Thank you so much.
Is anyone else hungry? I am. Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that. And you can see more of our Culture Conversation series next week, and a full special airing on May 24th. And that is our show for this hour. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, an ordeal Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan's spokesperson calls near catastrophic. What we're learning about a reported paparazzi chase through New York City. Plus, a little girl back with her father 6 years after being abducted. What we're learning about the role a TV show had in helping them reunite.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis. Streaming weeknights. Right now in America, with so much at stake, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings. This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now? I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
You're along I-5.
Boston is in the bullseye. Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7, straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
You never know what you're going to get on this show. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yes, Whoopi!
This mic on? Can you hear me out there?
Behind the scenes is always a better show.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what people don't see during the commercial break.
Right, they don't.
What happened?
I had no idea really what I was getting myself into.
That day that we walked out, I treasure that day. I couldn't sit there.
You're doing good, Joy. You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, baby. It was crazy.
Behind the Table. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot without ever having a chance to share my side of the story.
Aaron Carter's life story in one sentence.
The drugs, the drinking, everything goes back to tragedy.
But just know I've turned it around, and I've got a lot to say. There's always two sides to every story.
Reporting from Monterey Park, California, I'm Robin Roberts. Wherever the story is, we're going to take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
And good evening, everybody. I'm Kana Whitworth in for Lindsay Davis tonight, and thank you so much for streaming with us on this busy Wednesday night. And we have a lot to get to, including Prince Harry and Meghan Markle report on what they're calling a near catastrophic car chase in New York, what the police are now saying, plus how a true crime series helped solve a missing persons case after more than 6 years. And torrential rains across Italy caused widespread flooding, canceling major events and endangering thousands. But we begin tonight with that chase in Manhattan. Nearly a dozen paparazzi vehicles chasing Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan, and her mother in what the couple described as a near catastrophic car chase. Now, the couple arrived last night in Midtown Manhattan. Meghan was there because she was an honoree at the Women of Vision Awards. The couple then leaving the event shortly after 10 p.m., and that's when they say they were immediately followed by a caravan of motorcycles and mopeds, some driving on sidewalks. Authorities in New York, though, have a different story to tell, and an investigation is underway now trying to answer the questions: who is to blame and will there be charges? ABC's Trevor Ault leads us off.
Harry and Meghan this way.
The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, along with Meghan's mother Doria Ragland, arrived at the Women of Vision Awards in New York City last night to a swarm of flashing cameras. It was Harry's first public appearance since the coronation.
Watch out.
But their exit took a dangerous turn, according to a spokesperson who says they were involved in a near catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. Harry and Meghan's spokesperson said after leaving this theater, the paparazzi were driving up on the sidewalk. They were cutting people off, going backwards down one-way streets. They believe they could have easily caused a fatal crash.
The way I saw them follow the car, I wasn't surprised by the headlines.
Guys, let's get some space, okay?
After pulling into a police precinct, this video showing the moment they tried getting into a taxi to elude the photographers.
Just give us some space.
Their security guard at one point getting out, trying to clear the paparazzi.
It was a strobe show. It was like lights everywhere.
Sunny Singh was driving that taxi.
They told me to circle back. They were just about to give me the address to where they were going. right? But the paparazzis came, and then he told me to circle back to the precinct.
So very quickly.
Yeah.
How long were
Maybe 10, 15 minutes.
10, 15 minutes in the ride?
Max, yeah.
Did it seem tense inside?
They were nervous. You see the faces that they were nervous.
There are some questions about how dangerous the situation was. NYPD saying in a statement numerous photographers made their transport challenging, but there were no reported collisions, summonses, injuries, or arrests. Still, New York's mayor called the actions by the paparazzi reckless and irresponsible.
You shouldn't be speeding anywhere, but this is a densely populated city. And I think all of us, I don't think there's many of us who don't recall how his mom died.
These last chilling images of Diana in Paris in 1997, a reminder of the car chase that soon followed and her death, which Harry has openly blamed on the paparazzi, talking about it in his Apple TV series, The Me You Can't See.
My mother was chased to her death while she was in a relationship with someone that wasn't white. And now look what's happened. You want to talk about history repeating itself? They're not going to stop until she dies.
This is a moment that Harry will have no doubt been dreading his whole life. He's always spoken about the fear of history repeating itself. And what we heard about, the events described from the couple's spokespeople, was straight out of Princess Diana's story.
That's really scary, and our thanks to Trevor Alt for that reporting tonight. Next tonight, the convicted terrorist who drove a rented truck down a bike path along the Hudson River 5 years ago, sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. Sayfullo Saipov killed 8 people and seriously injured 18 more in an ISIS-inspired attack on Halloween. Before the sentencing, relatives of the victims confronted him with their pain and suffering. ABC's Aaron Katersky is in New York City tonight.
Called a murderer, a monster, and a waste of space. Tonight, Sayfullo Saipov is assured to die in prison. A federal judge sentencing him to 8 consecutive life sentences for carrying out the worst terror attack in New York since 9/11. 5.5 years after he hurtled down a bike path in a rented truck, the judge said Saipov still did not care about the suffering of the victims and their families, who confronted Saipov in court with their undiminished pain. "You drove that truck into my beloved daughter and you killed her," the father of Anne-Laura Ducat said. "Why, Mr. Saipov? Why did you do this to her?" Saipov never looked up. The wife of Alejandro Pagnucco shouting, "You cannot even look at us? You're worthless." Monica Missio said she was a mother subsumed by grief after Saipov killed her only child, Nicholas Cleves. People witnessed him getting struck and catapulted into the air, she said. "I'm haunted by the brutal way Nicholas died." Saipov's attack ended when he crashed into a school bus with children aboard.
Oh my God!
Emerged waving fake guns and was shot by police. Aristide Melissas needed brain surgery after he was struck. His wife lost both of her legs.
I hope really for him in jail that he will come to a point where he can regret, he can ask for forgiveness.
That's just unbelievable, and our thanks to Aaron Katersky for that report tonight. Also late tonight, the House of Representatives voted to refer a resolution to expel embattled Congressman George Santos to the House Ethics Committee. All 5 Republicans on the committee voted in favor of this motion, as did Santos himself. It will now fall to the committee to recommend whether or not to hold the floor vote to expel him. Santos was indicted last week on 13 criminal counts, including wire fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and making false statements to Congress. And next tonight, the director of the Secret Service is reportedly livid tonight after an intruder snuck into the home of President Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, at 3 a.m. while Secret Service agents were outside. So what were they doing? And was anyone checking the surveillance cameras? ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas is here with the investigation.
Today, the National Security Advisor declining to discuss that stunning security breach at his home.
I don't have any comment on the incident, but I have total faith in the Secret Service, and they do a remarkable job every day as professionals protecting me.
But the incident, which happened in late April, is raising critical questions and clearly put Jake Sullivan at risk. Sources describing a cascade of security failures when, at 3 a.m., a man possibly drunk made his way into Sullivan's home, likely through an unlocked door. No alarms apparently went off, and the Secret Service detail stationed outside allegedly didn't see him go in or leave the residence after a brief encounter with Sullivan.
It appears this intruder didn't really have ill intent, but if he had, I mean, think of Nancy Pelosi's husband and getting hit in the head with a hammer. I mean, anything could have gone wrong.
Now a full-scale investigation underway to determine what were the agents doing when the incident happened, and was anyone monitoring surveillance cameras?
So many questions left unanswered, important ones at that, Pierre. And you're learning a lot more about a Secret Service audit of the break-in. Can you tell us about that?
Well, they're doing a minute-by-minute audit to determine exactly what agents were doing and to find out what was happening with all that security technology that should have stopped such a breach, Kana.
All right, Pierre, thank you. And now to the battle over abortion rights. After the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, we have seen a wave of abortion restrictions sweep across the country. And now 2 more states, North and South Carolina, attempting to pass new bans. This while former President Trump is taking credit for appointing justices who helped overturn decades of federal protections. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, both North Carolina and South Carolina moving to sharply curtail abortion rights, with abortion now banned or deeply restricted across most of the South. Overnight, an emotional debate in North Carolina. The Republican-led legislature pushing through a bill to ban most abortions after 12 weeks, after it was vetoed by the Democratic governor.
It balances protecting the life of the unborn child. It balances that with a woman's need for life-saving care.
Democrats were dismayed.
Women did not ask for your oversight. We didn't ask for your supervision.
Today in South Carolina, Republicans trying to push through a bill to ban abortion at 6 weeks before many women even know they're pregnant. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned nearly a year ago, at least 15 states have stopped nearly all abortion services. Still others have passed bans yet to go into effect, like Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis signed a 6-week ban. DeSantis, who is planning to run for president, challenged President Trump to say whether he would do the same.
I signed the bill. I was proud to do it. He won't answer whether he would sign it or not.
Trump has refused to say whether he supports a national ban. But today he pointed to the 3 justices he handpicked that were appointed to the Supreme Court, declaring, "I was able to kill Roe v. Wade. Without me, the pro-life movement would have just kept losing."
And our thanks to Rachel Scott for that report tonight. Also, we have an update for you on the Idaho College murders. A surprise today ahead of the planned preliminary hearing in June. Instead, the suspect, Brian Kohberger, has been indicted by a grand jury in Moscow, Idaho. He is charged with 4 counts of murder and felony burglary in the deaths of the 4 students stabbed to death in their beds in November of last year. Now, I, of course, have been following the story from the very beginning, and here's what that indictment means for this upcoming high-profile trial.
Tonight, a grand jury in Idaho indicting Brian Kohberger on first-degree murder charges for the deaths of 4 college students at the University of Idaho. The move means prosecutors will no longer have to lay out their case at a preliminary hearing.
This is an easier route for prosecutors to take. No defense attorney cross-examining witnesses, no judge there. Just the prosecution presenting the case it wants these grand jurors to hear.
The 28-year-old PhD student is accused of stabbing Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin inside this off-campus home. One of the 2 roommates who survived saw a masked man that night with bushy eyebrows. She's expected to be a key witness at trial.
We have a search warrant for the building.
Prosecutors have amassed more than 20,000 pieces of evidence, including DNA, along with items seized during this search of Kohberger's apartment at Washington State. They say they found a pillow and mattress cover that tested presumptive positive for blood. Tonight, Kaylee Gonzalez's father, encouraged by the indictment, telling ABC News, "We are just grateful another step in the process has been completed, and we believe this was the best option for the circumstances."
I want to get the show on the road. I want to get to where we get to court.
All right, so let's talk about that. Next up in court here, it's Monday. Brian Kohberger is expected to be formally arraigned on Monday, at which point, in all likelihood, he will enter a not guilty plea, and then a trial date will be set. Now, I'm hosting a new ABC audio true crime podcast about this case. It's called The King Road Killings, and you can listen to the trailer right now wherever you get your podcasts. And then if you click the follow button, you can get the episodes delivered right to your phone when that series launches on June 7th. And now to the missing Illinois girl who is reunited with her father 6 years after reports that her mother abducted her. Police say the person who recognized the now 15-year-old girl had a personal connection with her and actually knew the story from a true crime series. ABC's Ariel Reshef has the details.
A 15-year-old girl remarkably reunited with her father nearly 6 years after police say she was abducted, her mother arrested and just released on bond. Authorities say Heather Unbehan did not have custody of her daughter, but ran away with then 9-year-old Kayla in 2017 from Illinois. The pair's photo shown briefly on the Netflix documentary Unsolved Mysteries, in an episode about parents who kidnap their own children. Police say a store worker in North Carolina, who also had a personal connection with Kayla, recognized her from the Netflix series and alerted her manager, who then called police.
We were contacted, and we had officers arrive, and they began their investigation, and through their investigative efforts were able to eventually positively identify the mother.
According to police, Kayla was last seen with her mother after a 4th of July parade in 2017. Her father, Ryan, was scheduled to pick up Kayla from her mother's home the next day, but neither Kayla or her mother were there. After first reporting his daughter missing back in 2017, Ryan worked closely with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, sharing photos and messages to her in a desperate search for answers.
The father was absolutely incredible in helping us and providing us with images of the family. And that's really what's key in doing these age progressed photos. You need pictures of family members, mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncles, as many family members as you can. And the father was great in providing that.
The investigation is ongoing, but it still remains unclear just how this mother was able to evade police for so long.
For them not to be detected over a period of 5 or 6 years is really, really uncommon.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Ariel Reshef, our thanks to you. We have a lot more to get to here tonight. Coming up, she spent 6 months in Antarctica surrounded by penguin colonies. We speak with the author who reveals her surprising discoveries in her book called The Last Cold Place. But next, we'll talk about the devastation and desperate rescues after heavy rain causes widespread flooding and landslides.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
Bring them on. If only there was a place in the morning to start my day. With a smile, somewhere to help me get in the know. A place as spectacular as, well, me.
I think we might know a place, right, guys?
Bring your friends. Oh, wait, there is.
Good morning, America.
GMA, 7A, every day. Boom, boom, boom.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Robin. Good morning, America. How are you?
Boom. Now that's how you start your day, people.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you? Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Reporting from Denver, I'm Mola Lengi. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
And welcome back. We're tracking several headlines from around the world tonight, starting with torrential rains across northern Italy and the Balkans. It has caused widespread flooding and landslides. At least 8 people have died and more than 10,000 have been evacuated. Rescue helicopters had to pluck people from rooftops. One pulled a woman through a skylight in her home to save her. Now, some areas received half their annual average rainfall in just 36 hours. And in Ecuador, an escalating political crisis after President Guillermo Lasso dissolved the country's National Assembly. The legislature had been forging ahead with impeachment proceedings to remove Lasso from office on embezzlement allegations. This stops that process and then paves the way for Lasso, who denies any wrongdoing, to continue to govern for up to 6 months or until elections are held. Also, the United Nations is asking for nearly $3 billion for urgent humanitarian aid in Sudan. They say a record 25 million people there are in desperate need of help. A power struggle between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary forces erupted into fighting last month. The violence and infrastructure breakdown have pushed the country to a near breaking point. How about this? Imagine spending 6 months at a research outpost in Antarctica. Now, your main company is colonies of penguins, and that's kind of it. Naida de Gracia did just that, and she's here to talk about her dramatic findings in her new book called The Last Cold Place, a field season studying penguins in Antarctica. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is absolutely fascinating, but tell me first, why did you decide to embark on this mission in the first place?
That's a fair question. Yeah, so I was a field technician at the time, so I worked on a lot of these long-term ecosystem monitoring programs, and I really enjoyed the lifestyle of being immersed in this really remote environment and spending a lot of time with wildlife and being outside most of the day. And I think Antarctica, for a lot of field technicians, was like the ultimate version of that. And it was like the most extreme, intense experience that was very much like the epitome of field work. I think that was part of the appeal for me.
The epitome of toughness, right? You're not spending any balmy Sundays out there. What was it like basing your life essentially off the movement of these penguins for 6 months?
Yeah, it's an interesting experience. You know, when you first see a penguin colony, you're just assaulted by the sounds and the smells. They're very pungent, and you see this like milieu of penguins, and they all kind of look the same, and you're a little overwhelmed by the experience. But we do visit these colonies every single day for about 5 months. So you really get to know the rhythms of the colonies. You can pick out individuals, you know what penguins are older, which ones are younger, who's a mated pair. And so you really learn to see and discern more in the colonies and reach this level of like intense intimacy with your like cohabitation, which is a really cool part of the experience.
Right. I mean, you're an observer, but you're essentially having a relationship with these penguins at the same time. You mentioned at one point in your book, you said, why am I putting myself through this? So how do you make the most of your time with your fellow researchers while you're totally isolated in this, harsh environment?
Yeah. You know, it is like such an intense experience that you're so totally immersed that you can feel very like present in the moment, but also the isolation does get to you sometimes. We didn't have Wi-Fi, you can't travel, you can't leave to go on like a weekend trip or anything like that. So I think things that helped us get through the months, and this might be familiar to a lot of folks that had to go through really long quarantines during COVID, was retaining our sense of humor and having a creativity and imagination and how we spent our time, and coming up with like different events to mark and to celebrate. So we would have things to look forward to.
We know the planet is changing. It's warming. Why does everyone need to know why do we need to care so much about what is happening there to not just the land, but to the animals as well? I mean, I recently had a chance to go to the Arctic, the other side, and these are the fastest warming places on the planet. It's scary.
The changes are dramatic, and most of the effects come from changes in how much ice is present on the ocean, because the ecosystem in the Southern Ocean and the Antarctic Peninsula has developed to be attuned to the yearly cycle of ice melt and formation. And when that cycle becomes disturbed or shifts, or there's less ice, or it forms later and the timing shifts, it can sort of unbalance the whole rest of the ecosystem and the food chain that's occurring there. So we're seeing decreases in Antarctic fur seals and in chinstrap penguins in the region. And that sort of points to a limited availability of their main food source, which is Antarctic krill, which is ubiquitous in the Southern Ocean.
Right, you're seeing these dramatic impacts in these remote places, but we have to keep in mind that this is affecting everyone in the world, what you saw.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Incredible work. You've done incredible work. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We really, really appreciate it. And her book, The Last Cold Place, a field season studying penguins in Antarctica, is on sale wherever books are sold. Still to come here tonight, the mysterious disappearance of golf balls from a course, the sneaky little culprits who could be to blame. That's up next.
I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot without ever having a chance to share my side of the story.
Aaron Carter's life story in one sentence.
The drugs, the drinking. Everything goes back to tragedy.
I just know I've turned it around, and I've got a lot to say. There's always two sides to every story.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television. Right now in America, with so much at stake, thank you for making ABC's This Week America's #1 news and politics show on Sunday mornings.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
And welcome back. A mystery is afoot at Muskegon Community College in Michigan. Golf balls are vanishing from the green there. So who is behind this thievery? Yeah, well, the answer might just lie in a foxy little family. It's so cute. Our reporter Riley Mack from our partner station WZZM has the story in our local lowdown.
Among the greens of the University Park golf course, there's a hidden gem of beautiful natural landscapes.
We have hawk nests, we have baby skunks, we have groundhogs. We have a number of dens around here.
But beyond the birds chirping and the trees swaying in the breeze was a mystery.
We've always had a problem with the golf balls disappearing.
Stumping golfers and staff alike.
Huh? What?
Until there was proof.
You can see the prints.
Kurt Hildwine is the park superintendent.
I have a very nice job, 69 acres of beautiful landscaping, and I don't have to deal with people a whole lot.
He found a pattern with the missing balls.
We just started noticing golf balls appearing at specific holes.
That was when he finally caught the bandits.
Oh yeah, look at this shot.
It was a family of foxes.
If you just sit here and observe them long enough, you'll see them playing with a ball, playing with a stick, or playing with a dead animal.
Hildwine says they've been stealing from golfers for years.
Just like your dogs at home, you get them toys and they love throwing them around.
He says the little thieves have actually attracted more golfers.
Just draw people's attention and then they want to come out and find out where they are.
He loves that it's part of his course's charm.
That's why a lot of people golf. It's for the crazy game of golf, but it's also to get out and see nature.
It's like the next generation Caddyshack. I love that. And our thanks to Riley Mack for that story. That's our show for tonight. I'm Kana Whitworth. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis. And you can always find us on Hulu, Roku, the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com.
This is ABC News Live.
To crush a family.